First of all, I want to thank everybody who has come today. We really appreciate you doing it. I want to acknowledge all the groups who are involved in the planning. There's the League of Human Dignity, Independence Rising, Easter Seals Nebraska, Madonna School and Community-Based Services, APSI, Nebraska VR, Adapt Nebraska, Integrative Transitions, Nebraska Family Support Network, Nebraska Statewide Independent Council, Disability Rights Nebraska, University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities at Monroe Meyer Institute, the Nebraska Council on Developmental Disabilities, People First of Nebraska.
Kathy?
You're on mute.
You got mute.
So I have to start that over again.
You can start at People First is where you get muted.
Oh, okay. So People First in Nebraska, Yarka, Nebraska, Harper Self-Directed Services, and Brain Injury Alliance of Nebraska. So I've just got a few housekeeping rules I have to go over. The first is we have put a list of keystrokes for Zoom, and it's available in the Dropbox. And Melanie has put the link for the Dropbox in the chat feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We're asking everybody, if you're not an interpreter or one of our panelists today, to shut off your video and mute yourself. So it will make the sound better for everybody. All sessions are closed caption. So to turn that on, go down to the little CC button at the bottom of the screen. There's an arrow beside it. Press the arrow and a drop-down menu will appear, and you just select enable subtitles. If you have a question for any of the presenters, please list them in that feature. I've got a number of people here who will be monitoring the chat feature. So hopefully we won't miss anything. And just a reminder, this session will be recorded. If you don't want to be identified in the recording, you can rename yourself. This is done by hovering over the square until the three dots appear. Then click on them and select rename from the drop-down menu and enter a new name. You can be anonymous, whatever you want. At this point, I am going to turn it over to the moderator for today, which is Mark Schreiber. Thank you, Mark, for agreeing to this.
Thank you, Kathy. As I mentioned, my name is Mark Shriver. I am the director for the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities at the Monroe Meyer Institute, University of Nebraska Medical Center. We're very fortunate today to have a panel that includes members and from the film Hearts of Glass, which hopefully everybody's been able to watch to this point. It is available through Friday. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it or wish to watch it again, you can. It's going to be available through Friday for everybody to see. So if you haven't seen it, I'd strongly encourage you to do so. Our goal today is actually, in addition to our panel, we have folks from Nebraska that we'll introduce as well as part of our panel. We are going to go through and have them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves and what they do and whichever they want to say. And then as moderator, I do have some questions to get started, but really this is a panel discussion and meant to, for you all to ask questions of them about the film or about employment and what you saw, about their lives. That's for all of our panelists, both the ones from Vertical Harvest and the film, Hearts of Glass, as well as the folks that we have here from Nebraska, who will be Jose and Josh. And we'll get everybody introduced here in just a sec. So as I get started with questions after the introductions, that'll give you all time to be starting to put some questions into the chat feature, which we will try to follow and then relay the questions to the panelists. That'll be myself, and then Sage Vos is helping me with that as well. So we will try to catch questions as we move along here. If we miss something, let us know, we'll get back to it. So I look forward to a very interesting discussion. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and have the folks introduce themselves. I'll just call on them to get started here for that purpose, and then we'll get into questions. So we're going to start with Jennifer Tentakin.
Thanks, Mark. We're so excited to be a part of this virtual programming that you have for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. My name is Jen Tentakin. I'm the director of Hearts of Glass, and I've been making community films for about 20 years. I moved from Boston to Jackson, Wyoming in 2002 and have done 3 feature-length films since I've been here, all focused on community, varying from stories about a local bar to a local conservation icon, and then this one about a very innovative vertical farm with a dual mission around local food production and competitive, inclusive employment for community members with disabilities. Yeah, we're just delighted. We're having a lot of impact with the film, and it's something I really didn't have in my previous films. So being part of these conversations is a great treat, and we're excited that we can bring virtual programming during this challenging time with COVID.
Great, thank you, Jen. Lots of really nice comments about the film already in the chat too, so it's very positive. Robin, tell us about you.
Hello, my name's Robin. I am the tomato grower and integrated pest manager at Vertical Harvest. I worked there for a little over 2 years. I also volunteered at the greenhouse when it was first starting up, so I saw a lot of the kind of inner workings of during the time period when the film was made. I grew up in Baltimore originally, in Maryland. I kind of came out here after college and after working as a outdoor environmental educator. And I also have been a provider for folks with disabilities or differing abilities, as we like to say at Vertical Harvest, for about 4 or 5 years now. So coming to Vertical Harvest, working with folks of all walks of life, as well as growing plants, was a combination of 2 of my biggest passions. So very happy to be here.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I'm amazed how you were able to combine those 2 passions. I look forward to learning more about that moving forward. Thibaut.
I'm still amazed.
Thibaut, tell us about yourself.
My name's Tio Sanchez. I was originally born in Bozeman, Montana. I moved here to Jackson, Wyoming when I was in 6th. when I was 6.
And what do you do at Vertical Harvest?
At Vertical Harvest, I am the packaging associate. I'm a microgreens associate. I'm a market associate, and a tomatoes associate.
How long have you worked at Vertical Harvest?
I worked there for about 2 years.
You have a lot of responsibilities at Vertical Harvest, so we'll look forward. I mean, that's 3 different jobs I heard right there, so that's fantastic. We'll learn more about that too today. Let's see, Josh, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Josh Wallace. I am 29 years old, and I was born in Mesa, Arizona, and then lived partly in California, and then here in Omaha. I currently work at Office Depot. I am a cashier, a logistics associate, a sales floor associate, an Omni part of the store where a lot of online orders go through. I do a lot of that. And I am finishing my 2 weeks at the theater. I've worked there. So that's a little bit about me.
But you've been really busy too. You got lots of opportunity, lots of jobs going on. Good. Jose and Tara are our final panelists.
Hi, my name is Jose. I work up border for
Jose works at the CHI Arena, and because of COVID, they are not having any events right now. And so he is going to day services at Vodek full time until they can safely start having events and he can get back to work. He's a ticket taker there, and he's worked there for 2 years.
yeah.
Yep. And just loves it. Loves it. I'm Tara Harper. I'm Jose's job coach. I've been job coaching him at CHI Arena for about a year, and then COVID hit, and so it's changed up a lot. I'm also Josh's shared living provider. Josh has lived with my family for 7 years now, and he's been able to be more independent, to get the job at Office Depot by himself. And so I've enjoyed seeing these guys just thrive and be more independent on the job. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. And Jose and Josh, just so you know, in the comments, somebody mentioned, Mindy mentioned so much talent in these youth. That's Nebraska's lucky to have you. And I think that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Please go ahead and start asking questions or putting them in the chat as we move forward. Don't make me to ask all the questions. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to actually start with Jen, and just with a basic question, I think, but just to get us started, how the idea for the film come about, and what message is it that you wanted to get across with it?
So I take all of my ideas from the community I live in. I know a lot of people eat locally. Well, I produce films locally, and I think it fit in so well with all of the other work that I was doing. I mean, I think the through line in the stories that I've been telling about my community are about social identity and inclusion, and who fits in what group and how those groups interact. So I think it was very much about that. Also, I think a through part of my filmmaking is realizing that we all have more similarities than we have dissimilarities. So focusing on, I think, breaking down the us and them. So whether that's cowboys and hippies, or people with disabilities and people without disabilities, I think it's irrelevant. I had been working on a number of films over the time that Vertical Harvest was evolving. So it took about 8 years to get from idea idea to the doors opening. And so Jackson is a small community, about 10,000 people in the town. I knew the women who were behind Vertical Harvest and the co-founders. And so I kind of, out of the corner of my eye, when I had finished another film, I realized that the building was up, the greenhouse was up, and they were about to get in. And it just really felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity to cover a story about a community impact business, and, sort of get in on the ground floor. It also, I think, and maybe I didn't know this at the time, gave me an opportunity to get to know some community members who weren't in my orbit, and made me question a little bit about why they weren't in my orbit. So it's been awareness raising on my part as well. So I think, I've become, I'm trying to be a good disability rights ally with the film. And it's taught me not to speak for people and to presume competence. And I hope that's what viewers take away from it as well, the capabilities of community members with disabilities to contribute, and what it takes to set people up for success. And that it's not just about the concept of giving people with disabilities jobs as charity. It's good business, it's good for communities, it's good for families. So those are all concepts that I hope people take away.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and, as questions come in, I'm going to go follow up with them. I do have questions, and we can have questions for Robin and Thibaut and Jose and Josh moving forward too. I think there were a couple questions right off the bat, and this might be for Robin or Jen probably, related to the expenses. So what, do you have information about what the operating expenses are, Vertical Harvest, and and it's related to that, I think, Kim Bainbridge asked, what was the total cost, and where did the funding come from to start Vertical Harvest?
Robin, do you want me to take that?
Sure, I've got some numbers, but yours are probably more accurate.
Okay. So I think generally the full cost is estimated at $3.8 million. And, Vertical Harvest is a public-private partnership with the town of Jackson. So we didn't go into it in a lot of detail in the film, but the land that the greenhouse is built on is a remnant strip of land that's left over from a public parking garage. What many of you might not know about Jackson, Wyoming, is that 97% of the land in Jackson is publicly owned land. We have 2 national parks. We have a lot of preserves, a lot of land that we can't build on. So it immediately inflates or makes land values extremely high. So this could not have gotten off the ground without a public-private partnership with the town of Jackson. Vertical Harvest went through a series of fundraising iterations, sometimes under an umbrella of a nonprofit. Vertical Harvest itself is not a nonprofit. It's a low profit, limited liability corporation, which is very much in the line of a B Corp or a business where investors are willing to be patient and put the social mission before shareholder returns. I think what really, moved the project forward was in 2013, Vertical Harvest received a $1.5 million matching grant from the Wyoming Business Council. So that was huge in the timeline. So I hope that answers your question. Total cost $3.8 million, combination of private donations, investor donations. I think you see in the film, the culinary circle made up of local restaurants, typically high-end local restaurants, have made a donation, an initial donation, in order to buy produce at market rate.
Thank you, Jen. Robin, anything to add to that?
I think that's pretty comprehensive. We before the pandemic, we're receiving donations through our tours. And we had this idea of a living wall where one of our rotating carousels, the one that you see that's kind of in the main doorway when you walk in, if you donated $100 on our tours, then you could get your name on that kind of wall as it rotates, like underneath the lettuce, literally. So we've got a lot of kind of individual donations over the years, but in terms of initial build, yeah, what Jen said that's very comprehensive.
Right. Thank you. One of the things that Denise Geringer asked, what do you know what the annual operating costs are?
I'm sorry, I don't know what they are. You know, I know that over the course of time, you know, they have broken even and I think now are in the black. So it wasn't an investigative report on their financial well-being. So I'm sorry, I don't have that, but I'm sure we can put you in touch with someone at Vertical Harvest who could answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Robin.
I was just going to say, I also don't have a lot of accuracy on that, on the annual operating budget, but what Jen just said is correct. Yeah, if you contact Vertical Harvest, call the number that we have, or send us an email on our website. We have people that would be happy to answer those questions.
Great, thank you. So this was also asked, Emily Costello asked for Jen, where did the name Hearts of Glass come from for the film?
Sorry. So I have a history of naming my films really long names. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if I could come up with a short name for a film? So I love the idea that hearts, you know, can represent people and glass is the greenhouse in the building. So that's really what it represents to me.
Great, thank you. I'm going to bring Jose and Josh into this a little bit because Jen talked about, you know, the message with the film. And Josh, I was curious as to, when you watched it, what did you take away from the film that might be important as an employee in Nebraska?
So I thought that a lot of the similarities were there. They have competitive employment, competitive minimum, like people being able to make minimum wage. Pretty sure most places offer like job coaching, and then like the benefits that Vertical Harvest has. A lot of places have that here too.
Jose, how about you? What did you take away from the film that you thought was important for employees in Nebraska?
He thought it was important that the people got to do what they were interested in doing. So it's so that it's person-centered. And it was pretty cool how the professional development opportunities, the classes in horticulture and things that some of the employees were taking so that they could advance in their careers. I think Nebraska needs to step it up in some ways. Yeah. So that people have more opportunities to do things that they're interested in, rather than just being placed in a job. A dream. Yeah, to have a dream. And that Vertical Harvest was an amazing dream that came to fruition, and it would be really cool if we were able to get something like that here going on.
Yeah, it is an amazing dream, and I think one of the things you mentioned is the opportunity for advancement and professional development. And Thibaut, you may be able to talk a little bit about this because you've had opportunity for some training and advancements. Can you tell us what that's been like?
I mean, which I just only did packaging. I only did packaging, but then I went to microgreens, and then I did want to do more things for my math. So I went to measurements on a tomato full. And then I wanted to do something with marketing. So I went to mobile market and I would market at Vertical Harvest.
Good. And they provide that training for you so you can make that advancement.
Yes.
Okay. And Robin, are you involved with some of that training too?
Yes, we actually just started our second round of what we call milestone marker trainings. And that's where each employee sits down with their managers, their team, and our kind of like Grow Well model person, Caroline, who you saw in the film. And we basically kind of talk about where the person's at. It's very similar to like a yearly review. And it's just really customized to the person. And they have a chance to express what they're interested in, where they'd like to go. And from that meeting, we kind of develop a plan of like, okay, you know, if you've been, like in Thibaut's example, he was doing packaging for a while and he thought, you know, I've got these math skills and this interpersonal skills. So can you start me on data? Can you maybe get me some time in the market? And we were able to do both. Fit him some hours into either of those. So yeah, with my employees on the tomato floor, we're having our meetings this week, and it's really cool to see where everyone's been growing even through the pandemic. It's actually funny, the pandemic itself has put a little bit of pressure on us, as you might be able to relate to in many ways. And one of them is kind of being more productive with fewer people in the greenhouse. So a lot of employees have stepped up and learned more. So, yeah.
It's a good. There's a couple of questions I'm going to ask shortly here related to pay and wages. But you mentioned COVID, and somebody did. Travis Hannah asked, "How are things going with COVID?" This might be for Jennifer, Robin, Thibaut, in terms of how have things been affected at Vertical Harvest and with the employees too.
On the COVID thing, I was not able to work at the greenhouse for a long time. Same with my other job at the library. I got back at the library in August, late August. And for Vertical Harvest, I did the People's Market this summer. There's gonna be one on Saturdays at the fairgrounds.
So just to fill in a little background, the People's Market is a community market with sort of under the umbrella of our local chapter of Slow Food. So Slow Food in the Tetons is kind of the umbrella organization, and all sorts of local growers come and sell their produce. And now they're doing winter markets as well, hopefully safely, I'm sure safely, but
So it sounds as if, and I think we had the same experience from what Tara said before here, that I know Jose's been impacted by COVID and not being able to work. Josh, has that impacted you?
So at first it did. I was working at the Majestic Theater through Omaha. We were open, and then COVID hit, and then they closed down for 3 months. Then we reopened in like mid-July, and then they only opened 4 days a week, and we're only open from like 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. To see how that went. And then down the road, they opened 7 days a week, try to get a little bit more business, but to find out that COVID just hasn't the effects with it. So they had to go back to only having 4 days open, 12 to 8, and only like they cut hours severely with a bunch of employees. And so then I took the opportunity to try to find a different job. And that's when I found the Office Depot job.
I think I see a lot of interest. People say we have to have a vertical harvest here, and agree with that. And I think the idea of having that kind of business that starts right from the beginning to include people and the kind of upstart of it is really important, whether it be a greenhouse type hydroponic greenhouse or something else. I think there's some interest in how, things operate with that then, and so there's some questions on, and Robin, you may know this, do the engineers who work on the project donate their time, or were they paid? I know in the film there were some engineers that were coming in and consultants, but they're also, I don't know if they're employees. We talked a little bit about this right before coming on, actually. The software people, for example, are they volunteering or are they paid?
Yeah, the majority of them, I mean, as far as I know, pretty much 100% are paid contractors that come in, whether they're engineers, software developers. The kind of donations and grants that we've gotten through many different avenues are what then pay for those kind of bigger expenses. The consultant who you probably saw in the film, well, I guess there were two Dutch consultants. The first was more of an engineer, and then, oh, correct me on that. Yep.
Martin is Dutch, and Thomas Larson is a Dane. He's Danish. So we don't want to lump those Norwegian-y people all together. Yeah, there you go.
Awesome, thanks for that. Yeah, so those two guys came in internationally, mainly because that area of the world has a lot of generational knowledge about greenhouse farming, and they were both paid for their time as well. So yeah.
And Thibault and Robin, can you give Kim Bainbridge looked up and minimum wage in Wyoming $7.25. Give us an idea of what wages are like at Vertical Harvest typically.
No, mine started at $8 an hour and went up to 11.25 once I grew.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and a big goal that we have is paying living wages, and that it kind of varies based on people's needs, depending on if they're renting or if they're living with family, or if some people through their kind of like health care services, if it's Medicare or Medicaid, can't earn above a certain amount, or they have to earn at least a certain amount in order to qualify for their benefits. So there's a lot of customization in that. But generally, I mean, there's no one that gets paid $7.25. Everyone's above that. And especially through this milestone marker program, we're checking in every 6 months or so to make sure that people are getting paid what they deserve if they have new skills, that kind of thing. I'm not sure what the average is, but the employees that I know about that I work with are at least 10 or more.
And if I could just jump in for a second, just to remind people that the film is a snapshot of the first 15 months of the business, and there's a lot of chaos that can be involved with startup. And I think one of the things that you don't see is people with disabilities moving into management positions during that first 15 months, but subsequently that has happened. There are two employees, Michelle Dennis and Sean Stone, who are now in management positions. So, Mark, when you say how important it is to have these opportunities for career advancement, it's struck me that they've tried to be responsive. They've understood that, when they had the opportunity to promote people, they have, and just giving people chances to expand their knowledge, or try things and maybe fail and decide that's not for them. That's an incredible opportunity that everyone should have on the job. So I think the periodic reviews, the weekly boosts that you see in the film. I mean, those meetings, if I ever had a job where I got to go to weekly boosts, I think it would have been a lot better for my morale at all the jobs that I did and then subsequently left. But what I think is interesting and good for the business and good for the employees is the focus on personal and professional development and this corporate culture of inclusion. You don't have to start a new business to do that. You don't have to build a $3.8 million greenhouse to do that, but you have to have the leadership that's committed to it.
It actually leads nicely to a question from Leanne Whetstone. And this might be for Robin and Thibault. What were the challenges in job training for the different positions? Were job coaches utilized? And how did that go?
I mean, we used to have Lavelle, but that could be inhibitory, as like Tracy Welch said, how you had to clock in and clock out on different departments, which be like painstaking when you first do it, but then you realize it's important to keep it so you know which the exact hours you worked in each department.
So learning
Yeah.
time clock and learning some of the skills can be challenging at first, but you figured it out with help, that how important it was. And to do it.
I mean, I had like a lot of job coaches when I was first working there. I had Tracy Welch, I had Betsy Grandy, and I had that's it. I mean, Betsy also has a son who has autism. He works still too.
He was the one in the film. Was that Ty?
He's Ty's housemate. Yeah, they own the house together. And just to follow up on what Thibault was saying, obviously in the film you see job coaches working and what supported employment looks like. The job coaches are paid through the Medicaid, the Wyoming waiver, and so Vertical Harvest is not paying the supports. They are paying the employee, and they are paying the employee directly. So that's just, I think, I know just enough to be dangerous on many of these things, but I know different states do it different ways, but that's the way it works in Wyoming. I think the other thing, and, obviously you can see, even here, we're doing it with natural supports, right? That people aren't necessarily paid to be job coaches, but Thibault and Robin can support each other through a presentation. They can support each other in the greenhouse, and that's something that, again, just gets reinforced, I think, with the corporate culture. Also, again, what you mentioned, Mark, is a business that from the get-go has the mix. You can just see everybody pulling together for the same goal. And that helps, I think, just with this sense of community and helping each other and making it a better employment experience for everyone.
I think that was something that was really apparent in the film was both those natural supports as well as what was coming in terms of some of the job coaching that was being done in terms of training. It made me wonder about here in Nebraska, and Josh and Jose, you can comment on this, and Tara in particular too, in terms of what supports both natural and then in terms of job coaching has worked for you, and then or what have been the challenges.
I would say for Josh, he had job coaches, he had job coach support, and then he was able to gain the skills necessary to the point where now he doesn't need any type of support on the job, maybe just a little bit with like helping to fill out application and things like that. So being that I work in the field, we're always practicing interviewing skills and things. So just a little bit of support from myself. And then as far as Jose went through our project search program at UNMC and graduated in 2018 and then landed the job at the arena where he had supports. And then the agency, because as you've heard over this week, that there was a time where everything switched from DD to voc rehab. And so with the funding changes and everything, his agency wasn't able to support him anymore. And so as an independent provider and as my family's the natural support for Jose, we luckily, even right now, we're the only, I'm the only exception. I'm on the exception list as a natural support to take him out, to bring him over to my house. Otherwise, you don't really get any other interaction, right? You have to be on an approved list to have visitors. And so luckily we had already built that relationship so that when I became his job coach, it worked better. We're kind of like brother and sister. Then I am his job coach. I let him take the lead and you just tell me what you need to make it work. So we were just at that point where I was going to start fading at the arena. And we got a foldable chair. So a shout out to the Tools for Caregivers Enrichment grant. We got a grant to get the foldable chair and so that I could take him in my car and transport him to work. And then COVID hit. So hopefully when he gets back to work, Jose won't need me, but maybe for, the beginning and end of his shift. That's our goal. Yep.
Thank you. Good. Along with, training for new positions is actually when you're bringing people on. And Ian Fleming asked, is the employment process competitive? And if so, how do you balance that competition while avoiding exclusion? And Robin, did you answer that one?
Yeah, so in my time in a management position for about a year now, the hiring process has become definitely a little more competitive. I myself don't have a ton of experience on the back end of like putting out the ads for new people and kind of like interviewing between the pool. Jen might have a little more to say about that for the first startup years. But as far as I know, since we have more and more people now in the greenhouse, there's not as much need. When I first came on a couple of years ago, we still had a lot more need than we often had time and labor to fill. And so if someone wanted to work and have a customized employment experience here, we usually try to fit them in somewhere. And now that we have more and more of our work taken care of, it is a little more competitive. So, if someone is really expressing that they want to work here and that they're ready, they'll get preference. And I think we also kind of recognize to always think about, if we have a certain need for tasks, what pool of people should we draw on so that we can be as inclusive as possible about that. I don't know if Jen, you have more information on that.
Well, again, in that we were covering the first 15 months, I think, in order to get Vertical Harvest off the ground, there had to be a lot of community support. And obviously a lot of that support came from individuals and family members with a connection to disabilities. So, and it's a small community. So in a way, the first group of employees was kind of already picked because they were running trainings even before the greenhouse was completed. They were trying to do sort of proactive education around hydroponics and what it might be like to work there. So I think, in all honesty, probably the first round of hiring wasn't completely competitive because of the way it evolved. You know, you can't have something kind of in the works for 8 years with people being like, you know, we're going to work there. We're going to, you know, I mean, and generating that kind of an excitement. So I would say, you know, the first groups of workers was already chosen in a way. But I think what they found is, and there's not a lot of turnover. That's the other thing. So I don't know how much they've had to explore competitive hiring. But I know that that's something that they're dedicated to. So it just remains to see, you know, what kind of turnover there is. But, you know, to be completely honest, again, you know, the way the company evolved, it is not going to fit some standards of competitive integrated employment. But, you know, when you look at, so competitive integrated can often be defined by sort of a percentage of people with and without disabilities in the general population. And, you know, that's maybe more easily applicable to businesses that are already up and running, you know, an insurance company, whatever, post office, whatever. But I think something like this that's so new and innovative, it takes a while to kind of catch up. And plus, part of the social mandate, and this is also, I think, an issue with rural communities, is that the opportunities for good employment are fewer and farther between. So I think all of those things play into it. The makeup of Vertical Harvest is essentially 50-50 people with and without disabilities. And I think Robin and Thibaut, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the maximum number of employees before COVID hit, it was about 41. And, you know, so that's a significant chunk of employment in a town our size.
Yeah, one last thing I'll add on to that is when we do have positions, if we are hiring, we broadcast it to the team first to say, you know, if you're interested or if you know someone who might be interested in it. Like we just hired on a new sales lead. And so we, you know, at our boost, which is now virtual, broadcasted it to the company first before we, you know, put ads in the newspaper and that kind of thing. So we definitely want to make it open to everyone who might be interested in it.
That actually leads nicely. Denise Geringer asked, what are the types of positions or expertise needed to manage the operation? So you mentioned this, Jen, in terms of getting it started and the management. And Robin, you have a very unique history coming into this. This is such a good match for you in terms of your both your education as well as some of the experiences you've had. What do y'all look for? What's needed to manage this?
Yeah, we often kind of use the adage of a lot of our managers were unexpected farmers, and a lot of the people who work here were kind of unexpected in the way that this operation drew a lot of people who are very passionate, and their passions often lie in working with other people, working with people with differing abilities, and also working with plants. You know, when we look at our management team, especially in the past year, as we've kind of brought on more management and getting ready to expand and really refine our different aspects of our you know, social media presence, to growing, to managing employees, we've been able to bring in more specialized people. But especially in the first couple years, you know, Vertical Harvest started at first with Tim, who you saw in the movie, who was the director of production. He had some experience farming before that and with hydroponics. Nona, the CEO, is an architect, so she knows a lot about the greenhouse and kind of how it works, how it functions mechanically and architecturally. And then there was just like a host of people who were just really passionate about getting involved in the project, learning as they went, putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. And so now a lot of the managers that we have are people who kind of rose from that, really connected with our culture in a successful way and lasting way. And, you know, along the way, from resources that Nona has provided, because Nona, our CEO, you know, she started in New York. She's a successful architect. She has a lot of managing experience. And she has taught us a lot, whether herself directly or with other resources. So those people that kind of started from the beginning have developed the strong management skills that we have now. And then they've been able to pass it on to other people as well. And I'm kind of halfway in between that, because I was kind of there since the start, but then I became a manager 2 or 3 years after it started. So I also learned a lot from the people who have already been there. So yeah, when we look for someone new, like a new sales lead, like management experience is really, really important. And also the other things like connecting with the culture that we have and the passions that we have are pretty equally as important.
One of the things I noticed in the film is it wasn't just focused on what was happening at work, but everybody had also talked about where people were living. And we saw Ty and his roommate, for example, got a house, which is really neat. Or they talked about things that they were interested in that they enjoyed doing, whether it be skiing or My Little Pony. That stood out to me a little bit.
Or going to the rodeo.
Yeah, we're going to the rodeo. We lost Tebow. I was going to ask him this question. I was going to ask him what he does. I'll get him back. So let me turn it over to Josh and Jose, actually, because I think it is important. It's not just about work and employment. You have to have a life. So what outside of work for leisure, fun, and do you do? And what's your living situation currently? Josh, how about you?
So I live in an extended family home. Tara and her husband Nate are my extended family home providers. And for fun leisure activities I like to do outside of work, hanging at home, watching movies, going out to the park, shooting hoops, riding, skateboarding, riding my bike, going to the movies with friends, stuff like that.
You're pretty active. Skateboarding, riding bikes.
I try to.
Yeah, I can't skateboard anymore. How about you, Jose? How about you? What do you like to do? And where do you live?
I live in Omaha, and I like movie, scary movie, and I like to play video game.
You like scary movies and playing video games.
And to spend time with my friends.
Yep, spend time with your friends. Jose doesn't talk about it enough, but he's a poet. He loves to write poetry, and so we've been working on getting some of them blown up and then framing them and putting them around his room. You love to do that. He lives in an apartment with 2 other individuals and has a agency provider that provides support while he's at home. You do have a good amount of alone time, so he's can stay in his apartment and hang out by himself whenever.
And when for our and more and going to someone to be celebrate.
He has 4 hours of alone time, right? And but his dream is to live in a shared living home, like Josh, and he would love to do that. And just like Jose having dreams, Josh's dream is to move out. He doesn't want to live with us forever. And so his dream is I have an 18-year-old son that's in transition right now. He has a developmental disability, and him and Josh's dream is in 3 years that they will move out. So I loved hearing the story, and especially the dad's perspective about how it's costing the state so much less to provide a living situation like that, and that they're fulfilling their dreams of being, active citizens in their community and earning a good income and paying for a house, being homeowners. It was so cool to hear that, because yeah, it does, in the end, it costs the state so much less by doing something like that. And that's what Josh and my son Tyler, that's what their dream is to live independently like that, with just a little bit of support.
Thank you. Gosh, I hope we can fulfill those dreams sometime. Thibaut, Travis had asked earlier, and I didn't catch it, but I got two questions for you. I'm going to start with one. The first one was, when you had to switch positions, was it hard to switch positions?
It wasn't difficult. It wasn't difficult at all.
That's good. What made it successful or easy for you?
What made it successful and easy to me is like people, they let me try to do stuff myself until I asked for help.
Yeah, so you were able to have the opportunity to fail if needed.
Yes.
It's nice. It's nice. Good. And they were there to support you though when you needed it.
Yes.
Good. So I was asking the others about things they like to do when they're not working. You'd already mentioned that work at the library and working at the People's Market, but I understand, I think you like arts as well.
Yes, I have some pictures. My phone.
Oh, tell us about that.
I was just painting outside. It was like smoky. We had a lot of wildfires this year. So it was like smoky in my region.
That's terrific. So you like to, is that a paint?
Yes.
Paint from your paint? Yeah, you like to paint? Okay.
Yes.
Nice. What else do you like to do?
I like to go hiking.
It's fantastic. That painting's very well done. And where do you live?
I live in Jackson Hole.
Okay. And do you live with family or do you live on your own? Or
I live with family.
Family? Okay. Thank you. All right. Catching up here on some questions. Several comments about the zipper. Zipper's scary for some folks. You've ever been on the zipper, Thibaut?
No, I don't want to.
Yeah. All right. Other questions then. Let me keep this going. I got plenty. So how many hours a week do you work, Thibaut?
If it was not in the pandemic, about 35 hours.
That's a lot. In terms of, Robin, are most employees working close to that? Looking in the film, I saw anywhere from, I think, 10 to higher. I wasn't sure how that was being determined.
Yeah, you're right. It is a range. Like in the tomato floor, the two full-time employees up there work 22 and 24 hours a week. And then elsewhere in the greenhouse, you've got people who do work 40-hour work weeks. And then you've got like, there's this one guy, Marcus, who comes in and on Wednesdays, and he's just in there for 2 hours a week. He also has another couple jobs in the town too. And that's what works best for him is coming in for a couple hours at a time with his job support currently. So yeah, it's a whole range, and some people need to get a certain number of hours for like kind of Medicaid services they qualify for, and then some people just love to work and want to work 40 and would probably work more if we let them. So
I think one of the things that I realized was, particularly I got very close to Ty's parents, and, obviously, they've instilled, and Ty has a very strong work ethic and has been working, ever since he probably was in high school. But the difference between having 4 different jobs for 5 hours a week versus having one job at 20 hours or 25 hours a week is tremendous when you think of the issues around transportation and just sort of continuity of experience. I mean, it's great if somebody wants to do that, but that it would be great if that weren't the default, where people are running around trying to piece together enough hours to make it work.
Thanks. And Josh and Jose, well, not right now. I know Jose, you're limited because of COVID. How about how many hours are you working, Josh?
So I can technically work up to 30 hours, but I stick to working 25 hours a week so that I don't go over. Because if I have a set amount of hours and money I can make. When I worked at the theater, I started out at $9 an hour, and then after a year, got up to $9.25 an hour. At Office Depot, I'm actually making $10.50 an hour and up to 25 hours a week.
Jen, one of the things that you've had an opportunity because of this film to interact with people from across the U.S. and panels like this, or and live, probably live quite a bit too, prior to COVID. I'm curious as to what you've learned about employment for individuals with disabilities across the U.S. Are there some common themes that you've seen, or some noticeable differences between states?
Well, I mean, I think every state is probably in a slightly different place in terms of, their commitment to competitive integrated employment and what kind of policies are in place. I mean, I think the consistent things from state to state are that the USEDs like yours, the Monroe Meyer Institute, are doing amazing work, that the disability rights networks are doing amazing work, and the parent resource centers are. But, I think some of what I've learned is more reactions from sort of general viewers who, for the first time are realizing community members with significant disabilities can contribute. So, I think that's both uplifting and slightly depressing in a way, that it's a pretty low bar, but I think you have to get to the general public. You have to, again, reinforce, the number of people with disabilities in the United States is, it's the largest minority group in the United States, and there's incredible economic power behind that. And so that's why I think a lot of it benefits corporations to be inclusive. I think you want this population buying your product and knowing that you value inclusion around and diversity around disability. So, I think there's some very good economic arguments to make to employers. I also realize that it can feel like a really complicated equation for people. High parental expectations, high self-expectations, good transition educators, employers who realize the value of community members with disabilities. But it's worth the effort. It was really worth the effort to coordinate these things. And we just meet so many motivated people that it's refreshing and it's uplifting. I think the great thing about the film is that it's not just about disability and employment. It's about sustainable local food production. It's about innovation. It's about a social impact business. So we have a chance to draw in a wider audience and really just open people's eyes and minds to a lot of things.
So currently, this is a question that was from earlier. I'm not sure I asked it. Was Vertical Harvest is breaking even financially?
They are, to my knowledge, they are doing fine.
And we talked actually very briefly before this, and there's a replication site too, or more than one?
The one that's mentioned at the end of the film is actually one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is kind of temporarily on hold. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time and organization to bring together the components to have a vertical harvest in one's community, the right partners. So they're, I think, in a fundraising mode and sort of have stepped back to a planning mode for the one in Lancaster, but the one in Westbrook, Maine, which is essentially in Portland, Maine, is moving forward. And the other exciting thing is this year, sorry, Vertical Harvest was selected as a like an innovation finalist for a Fannie Mae sustainability grant that included or was a combination of vertical farming and affordable housing. So they're actually running some feasibility analyses on 3 housing sites in the Chicago area. So it's exciting that it can be applicable to, you know, different underserved populations. And you know, has so many potential benefits to communities.
That's amazing. That as you said, the adding the living component into there is really cool. I'll mention that some folks here in Nebraska may know this, but I just learned it, that there's my daughter actually told me this as we watched the film on Sunday. There's a hydroponic greenhouse in Maryville, Missouri, just 2 hours south of us. That is a nonprofit that employs individuals with developmental disabilities. I thought that was interesting. It's not a vertical greenhouse. They take up a lot of land, but I thought it was an interesting business because I had never heard of them before. They're called Let Us Dream, which I thought was a great name too.
Yeah, I've heard of that. It's come up before. Yeah.
Kristen Larson asked, can you address the sustainability at Vertical Harvest and the progress during the cold Wyoming winters? Because I know that came up in the film in terms of the temperature. Maybe Robin, you can talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, when it's -20 outside and you've got to keep your tomatoes happy or your lettuce happy, it takes a lot of energy to keep the building warm. Luckily, you know, those sunny days can really help us in terms of how the greenhouse captures that light and that heat from the sun to reduce costs. But of course, there are really cloudy, snowy days where we've got to, you know, use our boiler to heat the greenhouse thoroughly. So that does take, you know, a fair amount of energy. You know, we as a business, as we're becoming profitable, you know, really refining our systems and expanding, we're always looking into sustainable options for energy. One of the things that we talk about is in terms of water use. As in our hydroponic system, we recirculate our water, and I think this is mentioned in the film, but it's, you know, very, very water efficient compared to a lot of traditional soil farming. So we save a lot in terms of water usage. But yeah, I mean, there's no real getting around how cold it gets here, and the fact that we've got to turn on our boiler to keep it warm enough for the people in the plants. You know, there are definitely options as we go forward, as solar becomes cheaper. You know, that could be an option. Of course, you don't want to cover your greenhouse in solar panels. That kind of they would take the sunlight instead. So, you know, that's definitely a spot where there's opportunity for innovation.
Just looking more positive comments about the film, and it's just nice to see and appreciate how the teams work together and the family perspectives of these individuals' lives outside of work as well. And again, that I think that piece outside of work is really important, and that family support was, and maybe talk about this a little bit, Thibaut or Robin as well. It looked like there was some nice coordination between families and as well as the employees and the business. Can you tell us more about that?
I know Ty's dad, Bill. I know like Mo Robble. It's like she's also a provider, Mo. help out like by sometimes like told I know like Mo sometimes comes in for a visit, tries to talks to other people that have like kids with different abilities.
Good. Thank you. How about Robin, in terms of working with parents, families, that level of support?
Yeah, I'd say families are usually pretty heavily involved. I think mainly because for a lot of the folks in Jackson, you know, like Ty having Bill as his dad, you know, Bill's had to be do a like kind of fight for Ty for a long time, and now that Ty has so much support in the greenhouse, Bill's actually been able to move, you know, a little to a less active position in terms of advocating for Ty, which I think is nice because he's retired and he wants, you know, not to be working all the time. But so I think he appreciates that help. And like Jen said, he, you know, he's a big advocate with figuring out what makes sense financially for Ty, for paying for his living situation, which, you know, trickles down to us, helping us. And then, you know, Betsy, who's Colin's mom, is also a job support, so she's heavily integrated. Mo, who Tibu was talking about, is a case manager. At one point, she managed like I think like a third of the people who worked in the greenhouse for case management, and she's wonderful. She's the one who taught me to always presume competence, and so yeah, I think the families in Jackson have contributed a lot to the culture that we've established here, and a lot of the kind of principles that we carry.
I just wanted to share, there's so many good things that we filmed that never found a home in the final film. And one was, you know, at the weekly boost, sometimes there's an invited guest, and Bill came in once as a boost presenter and talked about the ABLE account and how everyone should have an ABLE account, right, to save money. And, you know, I think just this concept of really supporting people's education and how to become more independent is really important. And people have so many things that they're dealing with, and families have so many things that they're dealing with. The value of having someone who's gone through it before or who knows how to navigate the process was really important. And it's been great to kind of see how people help each other out. Also, I think we presented in a number of national disability conferences, and you know, those are so important for people sharing valuable information.
And Mary Angus responded on the letter stream, and this is good to know because I can't tell this looking at the website from what I knew. She said what she really appreciates about Vertical Harvest is how that it is integrated and not just for people with disabilities. Someplace like Let Us Dream, I guess Let Us Dream is segregated, which I didn't realize. That's really good to know. Denise, I'm sorry, Geringer asked, can't recall if we asked this before, how many employees work at Vertical Harvest and how many have different abilities? Robin, you want to answer that?
Yeah, what I think Jen mentioned earlier, that there's a little over 40 was our count right before the pandemic, and it's still at 40. It's just that we don't have that same schedule for all of those people coming in because we've had to adjust. But we have brought more and more people back on, and yeah, before the pandemic. Well, I guess I shouldn't really be saying before the pandemic. Currently, registered as employees with us, we have a little over 40 people, and about 20 of them have some kind of registered disability. So, you know, once the pandemic hit, we had to go down to a skeleton crew, which were mostly managers. That included Sean and Michelle, who Jen mentioned. Each of them have a registered disability, but they're also managers, so they were here. And we have been incorporating people more and more. Now it's getting back to that kind of 50-50 ratio currently in the greenhouse, but you know, we've had to really reduce the amount of people. So we're not really over like 14 or 15 people at a time still. But it is about half and half in terms of disabled or not.
I'd asked at the beginning, what Jen's message, what she hoped people got from the film, and I'll actually go through with each of you at this time, and Robin, Thibaut, Josh, and Jose, and I'm curious as to what your message is at this point, kind of as we get towards the end here a little bit. I see questions starting to die out, but and I'll ask Robin, Thibaut this first, and then Josh and Jose. But Robin, what is it that you hope people get from the film and from these panel discussions that you have?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that Jen talks about, Thibaut talks about, Nona, our CEO, talks about, is that culture of inclusive employment and how presuming competence in people can really unlock potential in a way that lots of like pure hand holding and assuming a lot of the abilities of some person, of any person, can kind of limit that. So like allowing the sky to be the limit for people being inclusive in the workplace. And I think actually, Jen, you put it really well earlier. You don't need that, you don't specifically need a $4 million greenhouse to do that. It's really cool that we can do this and innovate agriculturally at the same time. But just in general, any place you work, that corporate or professional inclusivity, it improves communities and it improves people's lives as they get professional opportunities. So, yeah.
And Mary Angus notes, I love the idea of presuming competence. So important. Thibaut, what is it that you hope people learn from the film and from you about?
I'm feeling that like even I'm with Robin on this, that we just need to like let people do things themselves unless they ask for help. If I was thinking like another thing we could do is like a simulation of like we could simulate a different person's ability, be in their shoes. Like this is what it's like in this person's mind. This is what it's like. Then we can really see.
Yeah, that's terrific. That makes a lot. Yes, definitely. And I think the idea of allowing people that opportunity to take the risk, as you mentioned earlier, is so important. Jose, what would you mentioned your dream earlier, but what's your dream for Nebraska? And what would you like to see happen here that would work best for you in terms of employment?
I want other people have more job, more disability.
More opportunities for people to get jobs.
Yeah.
We always talk about, so I'm a program director for a transition program that's new and we're just getting off the ground this year. And we always talk about exceeding expectations. And so we may think, like I may think that Jose, this is his limit, but I should never set limits because he always amazes me in what he can do. So everyone can exceed expectations. We're always in the works and always trying to overcome them. So so just like anybody else in the work world, we
you never know how people amaze you every day.
you may never know.
Everything is surprising.
Is surprising.
Yeah.
Yep. Jose always tells me, just let me try, Tara. Just let me try. And trust me. And I'm like, I know, Jose, but I'm just so worried. I'm so worried because I'm responsible. And he's like, leave me alone. Let me try.
Yeah, that's fantastic. More opportunities to exceed expectations is what we
Yep.
get. And it gets to Tebow's point as well, that a couple people commented on Tebow about how well said you had in terms of learning from hands-on experience and mistakes. And oftentimes we exceed expectations when given the opportunities, as Tara was saying, and Jose. So those are really important. And look at, there may not be all those opportunities yet in Nebraska. And this film helps provide that some ideas about how we might do that if we can build an inclusive culture from the start in the business. Josh, what's your dream?
So kind of like how everybody else has said, like giving everybody the equal opportunity to have a job, because everybody's function level is different and everybody learns things at a different rate. And then like everybody being able to cross train in different areas, because it's important to learn different areas so that if you do want to get like promoted down the road, like you have that cross training ability to work in different areas. I know for me, working at Baker's, like I was a courtesy clerk and then I got cross trained in cashier. Then that led for the opportunity. I was a front end assistant manager for a little while. And same thing with Office Depot, but I think it's important for everybody to have equal opportunities to succeed in life, and like everybody has a different level of functions, so just it's important to have everybody have the equal opportunity.
Those opportunities, you said, and equal opportunities, and that cross training. I mean, you've had multiple different types of jobs which allow you to build different skills, which make you so much more employable moving forward, and plus adds variety and just literally spice to your life. It makes your life better and better quality. Same thing for you, Tebow. I mean, you've had multiple types of opportunities and jobs where you're at, and that helps build you as a person. And it's good you've had those opportunities. Robin had them. He's had lots of different opportunities with what he's done in the past too. And everybody deserves those equal opportunities to have that. Great. I don't have any other questions right now. Does anybody else have any questions for the panel?
There was one other question in the chat box towards the beginning from Jared Covey, asking if Nebraska has a grant similar to the grant they were able to use in Wyoming from Vertical Harvest. I don't know if the panelists here have an answer to that question, but I was able to find online on nebraska.gov, there's a list of grants that are available for someone wanting to start a business. And so I'm going to put that web page in the chat box.
Thank you very much. And I just want to thank all the panelists for giving us a snapshot into their lives. And it's been very enlightening and something we need to think about going forward, because I was really impressed by the film. I really liked it. People with disabilities, unfortunately, there is not that expectation of competency, no matter what your disability is. And so I think we really need to step up our game here in Nebraska. Anyway, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everybody who came to this session today. I want to thank you for your questions. And I hope we were able to give you some ideas for the future.
Thanks so much, Kathy and Mark. This was really a great opportunity. We appreciate it.
You have a good day, and I've enjoyed meeting all of you, Tebow and Robin, and Josh and Jose too. All these new people in my life.
Bye.
People are applauding on their pictures.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care.